We're now about a week away from the release of iOS 26.1 to the public, which is of course a really big update with a lot of new features and changes. With the latest additions with Beta 4, we have about 50 new features and changes that will come to your device once Apple releases iOS 26.1 to the public. So in today's video, we're going to talk about this update, and we have a lot more details to talk about, some new features and everything else that you need to know regarding iOS 26.1, the RC that is coming in a couple of days, and of course the final release. Now before we get into all that, I just want to ask you guys for a really quick favor. Most of you guys that watch my videos are currently not subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the videos and you want to see more of them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel a lot. Now, first of all, we're talking about two really important things when it comes to any new update, and that will be performance and battery life. So let's go ahead and take a look at the battery life and see how iOS 26.1 actually does when it comes to battery. So going here under settings, under the battery settings, if you go and take a look at the battery performance, you will notice right here that the battery life is actually not the best, but it's also not that bad. So expect to get an average battery life with iOS 26.1. Just like to put it in a simple words, if you have a device on iOS 26, just expect to have about the same battery life on iOS 26.1 as well. It is not improved a lot, or it doesn't perform worse than iOS 26. It's basically the same in my experience here using iOS 26.1 since beta 1. On the device here, I've been getting the exact same battery times as iOS 26. Maybe 1 or 2% better sometimes, but it's not something that you can actually notice on daily usage. So you can see right here, I'm getting an average about 6 hours with 100% battery charge. But you can, of course, you have to keep in mind that this battery is at currently 88% battery health. So of course it's not the best shape. So we're getting an okay battery life for iOS 26.1. One of the best sides of iOS 26 is always the performance. I've been getting amazing scores here on Geekbench 6 with iOS 26 actually since beta 1. And from beta 3 back in summer and on, we have been just getting amazing scores, which are actually better than iOS 18. And this is the latest score that I got with the 4th beta of iOS 26.1. You can see the single core score at 2,985, while we have the multi-core score at 7,568. And I did get even a better score with the 3rd beta, but it was kind of similar to this, but a bit better. So just expect to have great performance with iOS 26.1. And also using it on daily basis, it's actually quite good. You probably won't even notice, even now, won't notice that you actually have a beta and not a final release installed on your device. And now let's talk about some more new features and changes that we have been able to discover on the 4th beta of iOS 26.1. So I showed you guys this before on a previous video where we talked about the clock icon, the seconds hand right there, changing the frames per second, basically turning into an analog seconds hand, just like something that you will see on a real watch. But you can see the smooth animation there, and the same will happen here on the widget as well. So you can see the seconds hand, it has that smooth animation. But once you go on and turn on the low power mode, you can see how it changes. And notice now the frames per second will actually drop there. So the seconds hand, you can see how it behaves basically just like a normal clock and not something that you will see on an iPhone. Now here's another change on the settings app. When you go to your Face ID and passcode settings, if you go here and enter it, you can see that fade. It's actually really interesting. It has an interesting effect even without adding the passcode. Once you go here, you can see the whole screen is first blurred out, and then it will bring in the passcode screen. And even after entering the passcode, you can see that blur that you see for a second there is actually a pretty nice animation, even though it slows down the process a bit when trying to get into the passcode and Face ID settings. Here's another change. We have been able to discover this on Reddit right here on iOS beta, and we're talking here about the optimized battery charging icon. So whenever you get this notification on your lock screen, you will now see a new icon which actually looks pretty cool. And iOS 26.1 will also change some other things, like the border around the icons has been fixed. Now on the look here, it looks like it's just like a border. It doesn't actually highlight the corners like previously did on iOS 26. It's now like all around the icon. But there was a bug actually where if you entered an app and when you go out of the app and into the home screen, that like highlight around the icons would be just removed or would actually disappear. Now that has been fixed. And also it looks like Apple has improved auto mix for Apple Music via AirPlay, and now according to reports by users that actually use it, it's much smoother. And now let's talk about what's next. First of all, we're talking about iOS 26.0.2. Now, as you probably know, we have talked about it on a previous video, but it looks like it won't happen. Now, that has been reported and it had been tested basically by Apple. So, you know, like Mac Rumors had reported it, they have spotted it being tested internally by Apple, and that was like, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and we expected it to actually be released to the public like last week, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen even this week, and now I don't think it makes any sense for Apple to release it now, because of course they won't release it through the weekend, but they might release it on Monday. But on Monday we also get the RC version of iOS 26.1. That's why I believe that it makes no sense releasing that update when in just a week from then we will have also iOS 26.1 released to the public. That's why I think Apple will just like push that away and not release iOS 26.0.2 to the public, even though it has been tested by Apple internally. So we're now on the stage where we'll get the RC version this Monday, so in a couple of days here on the 27th of October. And that of course will be the last update released to the devs and to the public testers before iOS 26.1 goes out to the public. And then the 3rd of October should be the date that Apple releases iOS 26.1 to the public. It's a pretty nice update, as you know by now, with a lot of new features and changes. Now in the meantime, we will also move to a beta of iOS 26.2, and just like we have happened last year and previous years, that update should be out to the public before the holiday season, so most likely that same week as iOS 26.1 goes out to the public, that same week, most likely on the 4th or maybe the 5th of November, we will also get the first beta of iOS 26.2, which should go through 4 or 5 betas before the RC. And then, of course, the final release most likely right here on the week of December 15th. So that's basically it for this video, guys. iOS 26.1 is now ready to be released to the public. In a week, we should get it. It's pretty amazing. A lot of new features and changes and a lot of really nice improvements. So that is it. Thank you guys for watching the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. And I'll see you on the next one.